Okay, I think we're recording. Hi guys, I'm author Claudia Klein, and if you're watching this, you are probably one of my Kickstarter backers for the Complete Erlingue Trilogy Kickstarter. And tonight I am doing a live reading of book one of the Erlingue Trilogy, the Heir. And I'm going to read chapter one for you guys. And if anyone pops on live tonight, right now it's just me, but if anyone pops on, we'll do an author Q&A at the end. So without further ado, here is chapter one of The Heir. Oh, and I do want to show you guys. It comes with a map. I'm super excited about that one. All right, so chapter one. The Arbonadian scout peered out over the landscape from his watchtower, keeping a close eye out for anything suspicious on the Erlingue border. All around this lone watchtower were vast fields, the wilderness between the two countries. About 400 yards straight ahead, the fields ran into a thick wood. A natural border like this helped to keep out invaders. But who knew what Erlingue would try next? They were neighbors, yes, but friends, not at all. The scout had heard enough from the messages sent to this outpost to know to be on the lookout for soldiers from Erlingue. If the rumors were right, there would be war this year. One could feel the tension in the air here on the border. Fear was not a word the scout wanted to admit he felt, but he knew how important his job was, and how perilous. If Erlingue did attack here, his whole country would suffer the consequences. His eyes nervously darted here and there from his elevated position on top of the tower, as he watched the field and the woods for any sign of human movement. Were the trees just moving from the wind, or was that the movement of shadows in the wood? He couldn't tell from this distance. His heart raced as he stared intently at those trees in the woods. What they do? Rosie, you gotta be quiet because I'm recording, okay? What they do? This is for that book. My daughter wanted to be in on this with me, so I'm hoping this isn't too interruptive. But let me get back to the story. Were the trees just moving from the wind, or was that the movement of shadows in the wood? He couldn't tell from this distance. His heart raced as he stared intently at those trees in the woods. Reaching instinctively for his bow, he had it in his hands before he was even aware that he had picked it up. His fingers twitched in anticipation, fitting an arrow from the pack on his back to the bowstring. The scout's instructions were to shoot a small party if they looked aggressive, but if it was a true invasion, he was to ride as quickly and quietly as possible to the capital to notify the king himself about the invasion. The scout thought of his horse, already saddled in the stable down below, ready to ride for aid if an army emerged from those woods. Then he saw them. First one horse and rider emerged from the woods, then another, and another. His throat went dry as he recognized them as war horses and their riders as knights. Before he even had time to see the end of the army emerging from the woods, he was flying down the ladder and onto his horse. He'd seen enough of the army emerging from the woods to know what war horses from Erlingue meant. This was the beginning of their invasion into Arbonad. War was imminent. He had to warn his country. The scout raced across the fields on his horse, hoping, praying that the enemy wouldn't see him and shoot him down. Nervously glancing behind him, he saw a large Erlinguian army following him, at least 200 horse and horsemen. Two knights outfitted in lighter armor than the army behind them rode in the lead, pursuing them. He could see their bows fitted with arrows trying to get him in their sights. He urged his horse on faster, but the beast was already galloping full speed. Darting a look behind him again, he realized the two knights were gaining on him. There was nothing he could do. The capital was 50 miles away. He wouldn't make it there on time. There had to be some other place he could ride to. He frantically searched his mind for an alternate plan to stay alive and warn Arbonad. Suddenly veering to the left, he began his new course, heading to the nearest guard tower next to his post. It would be 5 miles away at least, if only he could make it. He looked behind him again. Sorry, I was just seeing if anyone had joined. He looked. Oh my goodness. I'm just gonna start someplace because I can't see where it went. All right, he urged his horse on faster, but the beast was already galloping full speed. Darting a look behind him again, he realized the knights were gaining on him. There was nothing he could do. The capital was 50 miles away. He wouldn't make it there on time. Be quiet, please, Rose. There had to be some other place he could ride to. He frantically searched his mind for an alternate plan to stay alive and warn Arbonad. I'm going to read the first chapter. Suddenly veering to the left, he began his new course, heading to the nearest guard tower next to his post.
Who's that thing with Grandpa? Who's that person's Grandpa?
That's me, and you need to be quiet, Rosie, okay? He looked behind him again. His sudden change of course had put only a few hundred yards between him and those knights. The two knights pursuing him kept following, while the rest of the Erlinguian army maintained their course straight towards the capital of Arbonad. What was he to do? The bowman came closer and closer to the scout as his poor horse began to fatigue. It was no match for the swifter horses of Erlingue. The left bowman's mouth twisted into a satisfied smirk. They had him now. He nodded to his partner, and with stunning accuracy, the pair simultaneously let their arrows loose. Both arrows hit their target, and the Erlinguians watched satisfactorily as the Arbonadian scout fell from his horse and landed dead in the field. Let's go meet the rest of the camp, the Erlinguian warrior growled to his partner, and with that they took off in the direction of the rest of their army. The night was pitch black. A thick canopy of clouds covered the light from the full moon, and any star trying to break through the darkness. The castle on the hill was cold, and the moisture in the air was so thick it was condensing and forming water droplets that slowly rolled down the stone walls inside. Prince Eric of Erlingue lay in bed, fully dressed, eyes wide open, unable to sleep in the few hours before his meeting. Tonight was the beginning of the rest of his life. The night would determine either his ultimate success or his ultimate doom. He had 1 more hour until the meeting. If he wanted, he could still back out. Should he really go through with this? The hours stole away as Eric debated with himself. His heart warned him that he was entering into a dangerous pact with a creature he hardly knew. But his head told him that if he wanted the glory, he's going to listen and find out. But his head told him that if he wanted the glory he knew he deserved, he had to go through with it. And so he found himself rising from his bed and making his way through the dark, cold castle, up the winding stairs to the tallest tower on the castle wall. He opened the heavy wooden door to the small tower room. Thankfully, it was empty. Luck was on his side, and no guard had been posted there tonight. The room was sparsely furnished. A lone chair was set by the large window, upholstered with a red satin cushion. The arms and legs of the chair were ornately carved with a dragon's head design, its mouth open wide, as if the chair would gobble up anyone who sat upon it. The window shutters were open. There was no glass covering it. A cold, eerie wind blew into the room. Hung on one wall was a mirror, gold-rimmed, so small that you could only see your head and shoulders in it. Nothing else. Beside the mirror was a tall candle stand made of iron, twisting around and around, all the way to the top, where a long wax candle was cradled in it. The wick was untied. It had never been lit. It must be almost time. Eric paced through the small room nervously. 3 steps forward, turn. 3 steps back, turn. Was this really the right thing to do? He thought back to the betrothal his brother Thomas had with the Arbonadian princess. The alliance between the two countries could be a good thing in the end. No, it couldn't. Not if Eric was going to become the emperor of the entire world. He must make the pact with this creature of darkness in order to defeat the 4 other countries in the world and rule them all single-handedly. A bell tower struck midnight somewhere in the city below, its low tone sending chills up Eric's spine. It was time. Suddenly, the candle was lit from its own, and the mirror began to glow. It was too late to turn back now. Eric turned and faced the mirror, expecting for half a second to see his own reflection. Instead, he watched it as a dark, hunched figure appeared in the mirror. It wore a hood over its face, concealing most of its features. The only thing illuminating the creature was the light of the pale, cold moon shining down on its hood. This wasn't so bad. And then the creature spoke, and Eric's blood ran cold at the sound of its voice. But there was no turning back. He had a pact to make, and he would see it through. It was the only way. Yes, Rose?
Yes, that it's just that, why can't I be in the picture?
Because you're playing over there. All right, I'm going to read the next, Rosie, I'm going to read the next section. I need you to be quiet for the whole thing, okay? 18-year-old Kat looked up from her book as her father, King Alfred of Arbonad, stormed to the library, obviously in great distress. His eyes searched desperately among the many shelves filled with books from floor to ceiling on all 4 walls. Where is it? Where is it? He muttered frantically. She noticed he was half dressed in his military uniform, the buttons on his shirt buttoned up the wrong way. One arm thrust through his coat, the rest of it draping down his back. Can I help you, father? She asked, rising from the leather chair she'd been seated on and going to his side. What's wrong? He jumped, startled at the sound of her voice, and turned to her, his eyes filled with anxiety and fear.
I want to be in there too. Why?
Rosie, I'm trying to read. I asked you not to interrupt me.
I want to be in there though.
If you keep interrupting, you're going to have to go to bed. So stop interrupting, okay?
Can I go in there though? I want to go in
Okay,
there.
sure. War, he exclaimed. The word brought a chill to Cat's heart. I have to go lead our armies. Oh, Catherine, it's our worst nightmare come true. He hastily tried to explain to her. We've known for years that Erlingue has been building up their armies. We didn't know all their plans, of course, but yesterday they invaded our southern borders. All their scout towers burned. Our scouts haven't been heard from, probably means they're all killed. We got wind of the invasion through a lone survivor of the village Hurst, just 30 miles from our capital. Seems these barbarians are burning all the villages as they move on to the capital. I've ordered all able-bodied men who own a weapon to meet me in the capital by tomorrow to form an army. But by the sound of how large the Erlinguian army is, we don't stand much chance. They're at least 1,000 strong, and I only have about 400 men I am able to place on the battlefield. But how can they do that? I thought we had a diplomatic arrangement, Kat said, thinking of her betrothal made 5 years ago to Thomas the Erlinguian prince. I don't know what's become of that, my dear. Perhaps King Richard of Erlingue has simply changed his mind. He laid his hand on her shoulder and tried to give her a reassuring smile. Your brother Aidan and I will be riding to the capital tonight with the royal guard. We will do everything we can to defend our nation, I promise. The desire to help her father in the imminent battle burned in Kat's heart. She was a trained archer and knew she could pull her own weight in a battle. She had never been in a battle before like Aidan had. If only her father would give her the chance, it couldn't hurt to ask. Father, let me ride with you, Kat begged. I know how to fight. I can help you. No, he exclaimed. You are to take your younger sister Lucy and ride to the south. Get as far away from here as you can. Ride to our fortress by the sea. It is hidden. If our country is overtaken, at least the royal line will not die out. You and Lucy will be safe there. If our country is taken over, you can take the ship docked in the harbor there to the island country of Everseen. They're our allies and will welcome you. But I want to fight. No, as my eldest child, you are heir to the throne. I will do everything to protect you. You will do as I say. With that, he turned and walked out of the room, slamming the door shut behind him. Kat let the book in her hands fall to the floor, sighing in defeat, as she sank back onto the chair from which she had risen. There had to be a way that she could join the battle. She was deadly with a bow, and her father knew it. Why wasn't he letting her come? She angrily stomped through the castle halls to her chambers. It wasn't fair. If she didn't take matters into her own hands, she would never get to prove her strength in battle. How would she be able to lead her country militarily without experience? That was it. She had it with avoiding danger. She was going to fight in the battle, and there was nothing her father could do to stop her. She summoned a manservant and made the arrangements to get Princess Lucy safely to the castle by the sea. Lucy would be accompanied by 10 servants and 6 soldiers. They would protect her sister and keep her safe. She didn't mention that her father had wanted her to come along too, and thankfully none of the servants asked. The arrangements made, she slipped into her brother Aidan's room and stole some clothes. They were a little big on her, but they would do to disguise her as a boy. Back in her own room, she took her long brown hair down from the bun she always wore it in, and looked at herself in the mirror. Her mother had adored her beautiful thick locks. She had promised her mother. I'll be that in the living room.
In the living room. Now get it out. Mommy.
She had promised her mother, you gotta be quiet so they can listen to the story, okay?
Papa hear it?
It'll be fine. She had promised her mother before she died 3 years ago that she would never cut her hair. She hated to break her promise now, but it couldn't be helped. It would have to go. I'm sorry, Mother, she said as she took a pair of scissors to her hair. The locks were soon on the floor, and Kat was brushing the wild mess that remained on her head, hoping that it was good enough to pass as a boy. Scooping up the hair on the floor, she flung it out the bedroom window, where it was caught up in the wind and quickly blew away. Running her fingers through her short hair, Kat second-guessed herself. Was this really the best thing to do? Disguise herself as a boy in order to join the battle? Just as quickly, she reminded herself that her 16-year-old brother was getting to join the battle, and no one was questioning that. And besides, the Arbonadian army needed her. She was a skilled archer, and she knew for a fact that her father only had about 50 archers in her entire army. Her father needed her in the battle, even if he pretended that he did not. If she proved herself in this battle, perhaps her father would see her as more than just the heir to the throne who needed protecting. Perhaps he would see that she was fully capable of protecting herself as well as her country. She left the room with steel determination. She would see this thing through. 15-year-old Princess Lucy sighed as she leaned over the railing of her bedroom's balcony. Everyone was so busy on this hot spring day, hurrying and scurrying here and there. The servants were talking in hushed voices, which wasn't normal. and she couldn't remember the last time she had seen an actual family member. Where was everyone? Here she was, feeling like a princess locked in a tower, with nothing to do but rot as she waited for her Prince Charming to come rescue her. But that was not the case. She was merely bored, watching the events of the castle inhabitants from her balcony on this hot spring day. She had seen more soldiers than usual. Soldiers always made her nervous. Her older sister Kat had for years told her the story of how once, during a jousting tournament, little baby Lucy had escaped from her nursemaid and gone toddling past the fence that separated the jousters from the royal viewing pavilion. She had made it all the way to the center of the field before her nurse had spotted her and dashed to retrieve her. The knights on their horses had been inches away from trampling her when her nurse had dashed in between the oncoming chargers, snatched up the toddler, and rolled away to safety, just seconds before the knights' lances collided. No doubt, even though she didn't actually remember the event, someplace in her conscious had remembered it and left it. Always corruption. All right, you gotta get that off the table. There we go. All right. No doubt, even though she didn't actually remember the event, someplace in her subconscious had remembered it and left an eternal fear of soldiers in her. My lady, she turned to see her personal maid, Millie, standing in the balcony doorway, nervously wiping her hands on her frilly white apron. Lucy saw the fear in her eyes. What is it, Millie? Lucy asked, suddenly worried for her family's safety entering her heart. Arbanet is under attack by Erlingue, my lady, Millie explained. I've been sent to help you pack your things. Your father has arranged for you to flee to safety. Flee? Just me? No one else? Lucy asked, confused that her father would send her alone.
Oh, what's this picture of? Who's that?
I can tell you when I'm all done, okay? I can't tell you right now. There were other people that needed to stay safe as well who could flee with her, like Kat, Aiden, and father. Not that I know of, my lady, Millie answered innocently. Come, we must hurry. Your father wants us to leave as soon as possible. Are you coming with me? Yes, my lady, Millie said with a small smile. Lucy felt her throat tighten as she hurried into the bedroom to help Millie pack. She felt scared. She wasn't brave and adventurous like Kat. Wherever she was, Kat was probably eagerly anticipating the coming battle, ready to do her part in the fighting. Millie already had a bag on the bed and had placed a few things in it. The two girls quickly filled it with everything else the princess would need for several months. Millie reminded Lucy several times that they had to pack lightly each time she put unnecessary things in the bag, like her dancing slippers and her favorite books. Everything they brought had to be taken on horseback. She quickly found herself realizing she would have to learn to live without where they were going. The next hour or two was a blur of packing and rushing through the castle, talking to a few highly trusted servants in whispers. The fact that the princess was leaving was to be kept a secret. No one was to know that she had left, and no one was to know who had gone with her. If Arbanad was taken over, they didn't want the Erlinguians to know that a member of the royal family had escaped. Before she knew it, Lucy found herself atop the back of a horse heading away south with 6 soldiers for an escort as well as 10 servants, Millie being one of them. The sun had set, and it was very dark in the fields as they rode farther and farther away from civilization. Their horses were laden down with provisions for their journey. She wore a dark dress covered with a black woolen cloak, the hood up, but it didn't cut out the bite of the cold night wind. Darkness masked their escape. It was a cloudy night. The moon broke through the clouds every now and then, lighting up the path they took one minute, the next minute plunging them back into darkness. Lucy's heart was in her throat. She knew that her father and brother would soon head out with the Arbanadian army to try and stop the Erlinguians from taking control of their country. She wouldn't know the outcome for a long time. Would she ever feel safe in her beloved country again? And where in the world was Kat? Her sister was heir to the Arbanadian throne. If anyone needed to be fleeing with her, it was Kat. She hadn't seen her sister in 2 days. Where was she? Lucy thought it odd that she had been the only member of the royal family chosen to escape to safety like this. Why had her father, brother, and sister decided to stay behind? Shouldn't Kat at least have come with her? She was the heir to the throne after all. It was important that the heir escape and live, or perhaps that was the reason she had stayed behind. As the heir to the throne, she needed to learn from their father what to do in a situation like this, when their land was under an enemy invasion. Lucy knew it was futile to worry about Kat. Kat knew how to take care of herself. As the future ruler of Arbanad, she had been trained not only diplomatically, how to rule the country, but also militarily, how to wield a sword and ride a war horse. Her father must be thinking this would only serve to further Kat's training. All Lucy knew was that she was afraid for her own safety, afraid for the safety of her family. The thought of never seeing them again sent tingles down her spine. Would that be her fate? She was going to the palace by the sea, but if Arbanad was conquered, what would keep the Erlanguins from finding her there and killing her later on? Would she ever see her family again, safe and alive? So many questions crowded into her mind, overwhelming her, and she had no answers for any of them. Only time would give her the answers she so desperately wanted. For now, she rode on furiously through the night, her horse instinctively following the soldier's horse in front of her. Stefan was the leader of this group, her guide. Even though she knew she could trust this man, her heart still pounded in her chest so loudly she could hear the sound of it in her ears. She was afraid for her very life. Thud, 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 the sound of her horse's hoofs on the dry ground, echoing the beating of Lucy's fearful heart. What would the morning bring? And that's the beginning of the first chapter of the Heir. So if you're watching this, thank you so much for giving this a watch. And I am, as far as Kickstarter announcements, I am hopefully going to be sending out ebooks tomorrow. And then, like I told you guys, I am moving in less than 2 weeks, halfway across the country. So I will be, as soon as I get my new address, I will be sending out physical rewards to everybody. And since there's only, I think there's 23 backers, so it shouldn't take that long to send out physical rewards once that happens. But I mean, but do keep in mind, like the fulfillment date is like fulfilled by September. The only delay I'm having right now for stuff is the new character card artwork. But other than that, everything is still on schedule and ready to be delivered to you here in a couple weeks. So thank you so much for stopping by. And I do apologize for the interruptions. But I'm sure, like, if you have kids, if you have small kids, I'm sure you can understand. But anyways, I'm gonna stop the recording and get off because I'm just gonna start rambling if I keep going on. So have a good night, and I'm super excited to be getting this book into your guys' hands. And thank you so much for backing the Kickstarter. Bye, guys.